Greetings, this is Christine Van Pelt on Gibson County, Indiana, and State Coordinator, Lead Recording Secretary for the Indiana Assembly. And we're continuing with Brent Allen Winters, Declaration of 76, United States Constitution, a common lawyer comments, clause by clause. And Brent's website is commonlawyer.com, where you can purchase the study guide, the Beck textbook, and that. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is go through the questions from last week's reading, and then we can go through, then we'll do the reading and go through the questions for next week. So let's go ahead. We'll follow along here. This should be a good view. Awesome. Okay. So we're starting with Article 5. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments. Number 2. Let's see. Then in order to become a part of the Constitution, either the legislatures of 3/4 of the states or conventions in 3/4 of the states must approve it. Number 3, the framers made it hard to amend our Constitution. Congress has considered more than 9,000 amendments, but has submitted only 33 to the states for ratification. Number 4, the Congress, whenever 2/3, let's see. Our Constitution sets no time limit to ratify a proposed amendment. Okay, so now we go to Article 6. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. Number 2, this clause promises that the United States will honor all debts and obligations made before the adoption of our Constitution. Number 3, in spite of the clause's promise, the general government failed to honor its debts to those who had gained for the United States by sheer audacious intrepidity vast land tracts we now enjoy. But they were stolen. All right. Number 4, clause or section 2. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. It says anything, right? Number 5. Further, the law of the land dovetails with the Bible, laws of nature's God, because both volumes spring and are rooted deep in the same source. Number 6, by declaring agreement among the sovereign states that the Constitution is final authority, this supremacy clause is the linchpin of the Constitution, holding together the entire constitutional design. Number 7, let's see. Number 7. Here we go. Let's see. Due process was a 14th century English phrase signifying the procedures fair play demands, and that men recognized by natural discernment, i.e. the law of nature's God or natural law. Number 8. By contrast, let's see, by contrast, here we go. Administrative law arises from the civil law tradition, stressing government ease of administration. Administrative law, admiralty law, martial law, and canon law all stem from civil law, that is, Justinian's Code, which is at heart imperial law as command and protection of state power, called the powers that be. Number 9. And further, anything contrary to our common law is presumptively unconstitutional. Number 10, Section 3, or Clause 3. The senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Number 11, this clause requires that both national and state officials give full allegiance not to the United States, but to the Constitution of the United States. All right, Article 7. The ratification of the conventions of the 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states so ratifying the same. Number 2. It is unreasonable. Let's see. Number 2. Oh, well, should be here. Let's see. It is unreasonable to suggest that the framers, unreasonable to suggest that the framers had any other person in mind. At least 50 and likely 52 of the Constitution's 55 signers profess the truth of the Bible. All of them respected the Bible. Number 3. Accordingly, they spoke with one voice to draw limits for government. Number 4, unlike our declaration signatures made for evidence of reliance on God and loyalty to one another, our Constitution signatures witness that the delegates did indeed ratify our Constitution as written on the document signed. Number 5, to apply our Constitution aright, such words must be taken as the framers understood them. Number 6, They are written as with a sunbeam in the whole volume of human nature by the hand of divinity itself, and can never be erased or obscured by mortal power. Thomas Jefferson. All right, so we will go ahead with this next reading, pages 162 to 169. Greetings, this is Christine Van Pelt on Gibson County, Indiana, and we are continuing with Brett Allen Winters' Declaration of 76, United States Constitution, common lawyer comments clause by clause. And we'll go ahead and proceed with this week's reading. American Bill of Rights. Comment. The purpose of our Bill of Rights, as all our Constitution, is not to limit the freedom of the individual, but to confine government power by the requiring that government suffer the modest inconvenience of our common law, called the law of the land and due process. Our Constitution, from beginning to end, is the enemy of government expedience. Simply put, to the measure one limits government, one is free. Indeed, every freedom in our Bill of Rights is an individual right. The framers, knowing there is no other kind of right, has no other kind in view. Further, our Constitution never even hints toward balancing the public good or other rights against any individual right. In fact, any such weakening of our individual right destroys the public good. Thus, our Bill of Rights speaks only of individual and never public or group rights. The public good is in nothing more essentially interested than the protection of every individual's private rights. William Blackstone. Any so-called exception to a fundamental right being outside the pale of its enjoyment is no right at all. Further, judges too often brook prosecutors' drive to whittle our Bill of Rights to meaningless nubbins. Such, for example, has become the rights against unreasonable searches and to a speedy trial. At first suggestion of adding a Bill of Rights to our Constitution, its chief architect, James Madison, said no. Madison believed that our Constitution's bright lines limiting the power of general government, especially the enumerated powers of Article 3, would keep government penned in, unable to reach individual rights. However, answered wiser heads, our Constitution is a mere paper barrier. When congressmen, judges, and presidents, by their bureaucrats, tramp on these paper rights, the people will have no ready defense weapon. Madison saw their wisdom and greed. Good thing he did, for government has now trespassed most all our Constitution's limits. Daily, Americans lay claim to these first 10 amendments to our Constitution in order to protect their God-given rights. Remember, rights unclaimed will not long remain. The Bill of Rights is the text for trying the acts of the federal government. Thomas Jefferson. Congress of the United States, the conventions of a number of the states having at the time of their adopting the Constitution expressed a desire in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added. And as extending the ground of public confidence in the government will best ensure the beneficent ends of its institution. Preamble, Original Bill of Rights, 1789. Frederick Augustus Muhlenberg, Speaker of the House of Representatives, John Adams, Vice President of the United States and President of the Senate, attest John Beckley, Clerk of the House of Representatives, Sam Otis, Secretary of the Senate. Comment. The foregoing preamble to our Bill of Rights reveals the rule for interpretation and application of the rights it guarantees. Our Bill of Rights is to prevent misconstruction or abuse of the Constitution's powers. Therefore, we are to apply these rights to stop government's use of powers the Constitution never lists. Amendment 1. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Comment. Amendment 1, as the rest of our Constitution, being a brief of common law government, defines no term except treason. Accordingly, the word religion here, seen in light of our common law as it stood at the time of the Constitution's ratification, signifies William Blackstone's lex scripta, law written or revealed religion, the laws of nature's God, that is, the Bible. The United States Supreme Court has defined religion. The term religion has reference to one's views of his relations to his Creator and to the obligations they impose of reverence for his being and character, and of obedience to his will. Davis v. Beeson, 133, U.S. 133, 1890. But further, Congress has no power to establish or disestablish a religion. Hence, the intent of Amendment 1 is not to create a secular society, nor to drive religion from public life. Thus, our Supreme Court begins each session with the words, "God save the United States and this honorable court." U.S. presidents and their addresses with the word, "God bless America." U.S. presidents end their addresses with the word God bless America. Other countries utterly forbid such affirmations under the law of the city policy to drive all religion from the public square except the government's supposed secular religion. For instance, this is the policy of France, moving the Frenchman Charles Duguerre to observe that God protects little children, drunkards, and the United States of America. He is right, and because of this truth, Americans have never seen this Amendment 1 to operate as a removal of acknowledgement of our Creator from public life. In all events, Amendment 1 limits the general government in Washington, D.C., barring it from all jurisdiction over the affairs of the states, respecting the 5 freedoms it lists, leaving to Americans dissatisfied with the laws of one state the freedom to migrate to another state. Thus, the indispensability of the fundamental right to travel. Amendment 1's controlling phrase is, "Congress shall make no law forbidding Congress to write any law respecting any of the 5 freedoms it lists of religion, of speech, of the press, to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." See this handbook, U.S. Declaration of 76, sections 30 and comment. At the time we added Amendment 1 to our Constitution, 9 of our 13 original states had state-established tax-supported churches. Accordingly, Amendment 1 targeted only Congress in order not to limit any state's choice of religion. Freedom to associate and disassociate is the most basic of fundamental freedoms, distinguishing common law from civil law. In fact, the overriding passion of the common law tradition is to uphold the rights and duties of relationships. The overriding feature of the civil law tradition is to enforce the will of the powerful party. Congress is our only national law-making body. If it obeys Amendment 1, there will be no national law respecting, prohibiting, or abridging the 5 freedoms Amendment 1 lists. The executive will have nothing to enforce and the judicial nothing to interpret. Tolerating any government threat to any one of these freedoms will cause hesitation, chilling of its free exercise, ending all our freedoms. Enjoying free exercise of religion, one's return commitment and obedience to one's God, frees the conscience, strengthens the spirit, and inspires boldness to do and produce. Further, Freedom of speech, assembly, and the press are necessary to freedom of religion. Without freedom to assemble and associate, speak, and write the gospel message, no one will hear it. If no one hears it, no one will obey it. The right of the people, also called the militia of the several states, peaceably to assemble and to petition. The powers that be, to sign a petition to put a candidate for office on the ballot and to file pleadings in a court case to which one is a party without fear of retaliation, is fundamental. The word peaceably means orderly. It does not mean that an assembly is disorderly because of some claimed agitation of others into disorderly behavior. Amendment 1 bars Congress from helping or hampering a single religious sect or group of sects to the exclusion of another or others. The Establishment Clause, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, forbids government from helping any particular religious establishment. Example, a church domination or sect, to the exclusion of another, or hampering any religious group by giving an unfair advantage to helping another. The Free Exercise Clause, Congress shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise thereof, bars Congress from hampering any person's exercise of his religious beliefs. Above all, Amendment 1 limits government, not you. Thus, it bars government, hirelings, and courts from meddling in the affairs of any establishment of religion, one's free associations in common faith. While not hindering the free exercise of religion, one acts and speech of one's faith. Respecting government affairs. See this handbook, U.S. Declaration of 76, sections 22 and comment. In the spirit of the common law, Amendment 1 never burdens any one of the people or any religious organization, but instead burdens government with two duties. Never help or hinder any religious organization, establishment of religion, to the exclusion of any other. Never hinder any one person's free exercise of his religion. Though never using the words wall, separation, or church, Amendment 1 limits government power by barring it from using the evils of priestcraft to complete its schemes of statecraft, forming the total state, the foundation of civil law government. Both Scripture and the common law distinguish between the church and a country's government, so that the church, the government's, and the country's voice of conscience will stay independent in its speaking of truth, and each of its members' consciences unfettered as they take part in government. On the other hand, if government uses the church to form a monolithic solidarity of a single will called the state, leaders of that church will become fawning bureaucrats. Indeed, experience shows that where a religious organization is dependent on the state, it will seek favor by the state by speaking and acting in support of government power. Thus, God's spokesman becomes the direct tool of the political will, and that organization's members become its indirect pawns. In short, and at the least, any churches, and indeed any others, dependence on the powers that be chills free speech and curtails obedience to truth. Every part of our Constitution is for limiting government, not the individual. Amendment 1 bars government from favoring any part of the church over any other part or hindering any part. For government to violate either the Establishment or Prohibition Clause is to also violate the other. For example, government refusal to recognize tax exemptions to those parts of the church that refuse government registration while allowing tax exemption to those parts of the church that seek government registration, is to violate both clauses of Amendment 1. In sum, to favor any sect is to give that sect an advantage. To hinder any sect is to help other sects. Amendment 1 forbids both. At the foundation of Amendment 1 is freedom of association, which includes freedom to disassociate and to not associate at all, to choose one mate over another or none at all, and the right to contract with one and not another, or not to contract at all. In short, each person is free to form relationships with those he chooses and to not form relationships with those he does not choose. In fact, freedom of religion is at heart freedom to associate, fellowship with God, and the right to assemble in worship, association with men. For example, freedom of association bars the general government from meddling in relationships, forcing any person to contract, barring him from contracting with another, or otherwise entering an agreement with an insurance company for health care. By the same principle, freedom of speech includes freedom to choose what to speak or not to speak at all, i.e., to exercise your right to remain silent according to Amendment 5. The freedoms of Amendment 1 are grouped together by design. Being entwined, they rise and fall together. Freedom of association is our country's greatest strength, spelling the difference between our common law tradition and Babylon's civil law tradition. Babylon's civil law, the law of the city-state, empowers the evil empire, the strength holding together the civil law state. The single forced vertical relationship of each individual subject to the state above, forced to obey its will as given by its legislative command. By contrast, our common law, law of the land, protects above all else freedom of association, that is, freedom to forge and keep relationships, the foundation of all other freedoms. Relationships are about commitments, the law of promises, loyalty, and dependability. Bottom line, relationships form our country's impenetrable fiber. Such freely entered horizontal promises, person to person, form a matting of numberless crisscrossed ties throughout the nation, a fabric of relationships no other power can tear up. Indeed, the key to American strength is in our common law's protection of the relationships binding people together. This protection emboldens reciprocal commitments between men, each knowing the common law will enforce the other's promise. To sum up, our country's power is the sum of many individuals having grit to keep their word, the greatest protection against our foes. Thus, the overarching aim of the common law tradition of government is to protect and thus foster lawful horizontal relationships freely chosen. The dominating aim of the civil law state, which now covers almost the entire globe, is to force obedience to its will commanded through its legislation and regulatory bureaucrats. The controlling idea of civil law is to justify the will of the powerful party. All things are deduced from or deferred to his will. By contrast, the central idea of our common law is relationship. The civil law speaks of family law. We speak of the law of domestic relationship, or domestic relations. The double titles of our digest, such as principal and surety, or vendor and purchaser, where the civil law uses one word, suretyship or sale. Tell the story. Common law sees all things in light of relationship. Roscoe Pound. And that is the end of this week's call, or this week's reading, and I will see you on the next call. All right. Let's go ahead and hopefully, yeah, this should be still going. All right, so we'll run through these questions here. Not sure what that box is up. Showing there. We'll see, I guess. Let's see. To make all things little and see what's going on. Alright, so we'll go ahead. Now we should be not sure why that's doing that, but we'll go ahead. Alright, so American Bill of Rights. Okay, so number 1, our Constitution from beginning to end is the blank of government blank. Number 2, any so-called blank to a fundamental right being outside the pale of its enjoyment is blank right at all. Number 3, however answered wiser heads, our Constitution is a mere blank barrier. When congressmen, judges, and presidents by their blank tramp on these paper rights, the people will have no ready defense weapon. All right. Congress of the United States. Number 1, the conventions of a number of the states having at the time of their adopting the Constitution expressed a desire in order to blank misconstruction or blank of its powers that further declaratory and blank clauses should be added. And as extending the ground of public confidence in the government will best ensure the beneficent ends of its institution. Preamble from Original Bill of Rights, 1789. Number 2, our Bill of Rights is to prevent blank or abuse of the Constitution's blank. Amendment 1. Number 1, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of blank or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of blank, or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to blank, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Number 2, Amendment 1, blank, only blank in order not to limit the states. Number 3, blank any government threat to any one of these freedoms that causes a blank chilling of its exercise will end all our freedoms. Number 4, further, freedom of speech, assembly, and the press are blank to freedom of blank. Without freedom to assemble and associate, speak, and write the gospel message, no one will hear it. If no one hears it, no one will obey it. Number 5, the free blank clause, Congress shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise thereof, bars Congress from blank any person's exercise of his religious beliefs. Number 6, in the spirit of the common law, Amendment 1 never burdens any one of the people or any religious organization, but instead burdens blank with blank duties, never help or hinder any religious organization, establishment of religion, to the exclusion of any other, never hinder any one person's free exercise of his religion. Number 7, on the other hand, if government uses a church to form a monolithic solidarity of a blank will called the state, leaders of that church will become fawning blank. Number 8, in short and at least, any churches and indeed any others' dependence on the powers that be chills free speech and blank obedience to blank. Number 9, each person is free to blank with those he chooses and to blank with those he does not choose. Number 10, for example, freedom of association, blank, the federal government, blank, from blank, any person to contract or otherwise enter an agreement with an insurance company for health care. Number 11, every part of our Constitution is for blank blank, not the people. All right, and a reminder, our General Assembly and Militia Assembly meet on the first and third Mondays of the month at 6 p.m. Central, and then General Assembly and Militia Assembly meet on the second and fourth Mondays. The four pillars of the Assembly are the General Assembly, the Business or International Assembly, the General Assembly, and the Militia Assembly. The Militia Assembly is extremely connected to all the other three pillars as well. So therefore it is one that carries through with everything here. A reminder that we are sharing state coordinator support with the Kentucky Assembly, as the Kentucky Assembly is sharing Marshal at Arms support for the Indiana Assembly. Here is the PKTF News, Peacekeeper Task Force News, that we are supporting to share on their link on our website as well. And here are our social media channels where we're posting everything. All right, everyone, I want to thank you for the call, and we'll see you on next week's call. Peace and love.